Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword, for I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother. Happy Father's Day. Jesus is not going to get that job. He's after marketing for Hallmark, I don't think. I have to say, whenever I hear that hard gospel lesson, I associate it with at least two times that are very distinct in my mind that I preached on this in the past. The first was the morning after arriving home from Haiti some years ago. I went to Haiti very often before the most current troubles and worked with the Episcopal Church there to start a new school, an Episcopal churches that I had served, and we were celebrating the opening of that school, and so it was a good trip. It was exhausting, as they always are, but I was crunched to prepare for that sermon because I was supposed to get home on Friday, and Friday turned into Saturday that we were going to get home, and Saturday morning turned into Saturday night, and I finally had a chance to really look at what I was going to preach on, and that gospel text was it, and oh boy, there it was. And being tired, because Haiti is a lot, I wasn't sure what to do. I thought about bringing in the trips and how we would go and do this hard work and drive in the back of pickups 2 hours each way to get to the place of the school, and the bumpy, dusty roads and 100-degree heat in the summer with food that doesn't always sit well on American stomachs. Of course, surrounded by the extreme poverty and need. So who's signing up, by the way? Well, no one probably would if the only consideration would be what you need to do for yourself, which is probably not go to Haiti, or personal comfort. And yet 12 people decided to go. And when I think about why, there's only really one reason why, and that is Jesus, because we were followers of Jesus. And thus 12 people who otherwise could have had a comfortable week at home, probably pretty forgettable, went and did something hard but good in partnership with those in extreme need who are our brothers and sisters. But it struck me as I dealt with that gospel that day, how somewhere along the way, this mandate that we have as Christians to stretch ourselves because of our faith, that has gotten a little bit lost in some corners of Christianity. Sadly, this can be true, particularly in the American context, because in America we can pick and choose most things in life, and I love that along with everyone else, and yet we can become tempted to think that should include the things of faith as well. If not careful, when we speak of the church or of our faith, we can do so talking only about our own desires and taste, our wants and priorities. And yet, as we hear from Jesus today, that was most certainly not his priority. Faithfulness, no matter the cost, was what Jesus was and remains first and foremost about. And thus, when Jesus talks like this in the Gospels, you can almost always assure yourself that he's doing so as he's weighing the consequences of the Gospel's call on our lives and our actions. Jesus has done this for himself, and he knows that it's going to cost him everything, most especially including his life. And that's because Jesus recognizes that when you confront corrupt power in this world, when you unmask faithlessness by those hiding behind a veneer of authority, but it's really just self-service, when you even call out religion that fails to live into God's good purposes, well, there's going to be a collision in this world. And Jesus' disciples were being challenged by him to figure this out as well. And by the way, that challenge hasn't stopped. With those first disciples, it continues to you and me, that following him in the way that he goes about life in this world, the way he walks, will have a price. And those first disciples came to find out that they would be asked to pay it. They would pay it in their very bodies, as following him would cost almost every single one of them their lives as well. And so their decision to walk in the way of Jesus had to be, or at least become, more than about what it would personally offer them. They came to know for sure that it was a call beyond self. And I say all of that, and I don't want to sound overly preachy. First off, because I would really love for you to come back. But also because I don't want to lose focus that our needs, our spiritual lives very much matter. Right in the midst of this hard gospel lesson, where probably the bad parts stand out because that's where we ended, but I hope that you didn't hear the part where it said that every hair on your head is known to God. You matter. Your heart's desires matter. Each and every one of us here is precious to God. It's just that we have to also remember that people not named us also matter every bit as much to God as we do. And so while we appropriately work hard here at St. Paul's to meet our own people's needs and help each and every one of us to cultivate our own spiritual lives, we must do so while never losing sight that that isn't all that this church is tasked with doing, that we are also tasked with being a community that meets the challenges of the world about us, including those outside of our doors, no matter what it cost of us and how much we could get away with not doing it. Even when it's not easy, especially, in fact, when it is not. And we do this, as we hear today, because Jesus flat out insists that we do. And this is why, again and again in the Gospels, I guess it's why at least that most crowds at one time or another abandoned Jesus. It's why his family at times thought he was going too far, even lost his mind. It's why most of his disciples will flee and deny and betray when he goes all the way to a cross, because the cost just became too much. But nonetheless, there he goes and bids us to follow behind. And so even though this is the stuff of the Christian life that may not pull real well, that doesn't work in any advertising campaigns for churches, it remains the way of Jesus if we are going to follow where Jesus is going. My second association with this text and preaching was when I did so for my daughter Abigail's baptism, which happened on this day in the church calendar and thus had this gospel text because Shelley and I set that day based upon when family could be there and without me looking at the gospel text I was going to preach on. Now, trying to figure out how in the world I could make words about children being pitted against their parents fit with my precious little girl's baptism, well, that seemed quite a stretch. But as I was trying to figure it out, I remembered the saints. So many of them, like St. Francis, famous saint. But Francis, well, he was raised in a religious family. If you didn't know this, he was affluent. His dad was powerful. They had this great family business. And Francis was destined to take on that family heritage and be powerful and affluent as well. But somewhere along the way, he had this vision where God said to him, "Restore and fix my church." And Francis took that quite literally and took a bunch of his daddy's money and gave it away to help restore his local church. His dad didn't like it. Francis still felt called to God, and so Francis famously strips naked in the church, and he said, "I came in the world this way, and I'll leave it this way, but I'm going to follow the way of Jesus." And when I remembered that, and how so many of the saints had similar stories with their families, and their families oftentimes were Christians, the thing is they just didn't want to take it that far. And I remembered that in Abigail's baptism that if Shelley and I were actually paying attention to what we were saying, we were promising to take it that far, no matter what plans we had for Abigail's life, continue to. See, it was kind of like Jesus was saying to us that day that just as we were becoming a family, I have come to make you whole. But here's the thing, I've also come to make the world whole through you. And that means this day is more than just about you. It's about the very life of the world about you. I have come to give you joy, but I've also come to make you sometimes agonize over the agonies of the world, even when they don't touch you personally. I've come to ignite conversations within your soul about how you can't just let the hard things in the world go because you could get away with it, but to ask you to take responsibility for others, even though you don't have to, except that you say that you want to follow me. And when I thought and still think about Jesus' words like that, I don't hear them as harsh. I hear them as challenging, but I also hear them as true to this faith that has brought us here today. And that's what Shelley and I were promising that day at that baptism, at least if we meant the words that we said. Now, what you do with Jesus' words today, only you can decide. You could just let them go. Many do, if you haven't noticed. Too many. But I hope you won't. In fact, I hope you'll have some real Christian discussion within yourself and with your God, maybe within your family as well. And I hope that we'll have some real Christian discussions as a church as we figure out how to be faithful in a world like this right now. Because I can tell you, many people are avoiding doing the right thing for their version of peace, and sometimes doing the right thing won't bring it. And yet the world desperately needs that sort of witness. It's like I once heard a wise old priest say one time, Jesus' adversary can easily be a happy and contented church that never asks anything of its members. For that's a church that's given up or given in too soon, or a congregation where everything is set only according to the wishes and desires of its own people, with never a challenge for those people to be called to what Jesus would stretch them to go and do. Theologian and ethicist Stanley Hauerwas used to open one of his classes at Duke Divinity School reading a letter from a parent to a governmental official. The parent's complaining that his son, who's received the best education and gone to all the right schools, was headed for a really great job as a lawyer. Well, he had gotten involved in some weird religious sect, and the son had changed his entire life and given up all of his original plans about being successful and powerful, plans that his family most certainly had for him as well. And the parents were pleading with the government to do something about this terrible religious sect. Who is this letter describing, Hauerwas asked? Moonies or something like that? Well, no, this letter is but one of many composed by 3rd century Roman parents concerning a crazy religious group that was new called Christians. And we can, and we should, be that crazy again. The life of the world depends on it. Crazy enough to believe that we can follow the way of Jesus and change this world for good. But that means that we can't just sit around counting cost, but rather pay whatever it takes to actually follow Jesus. Pray we do. Amen.